It was an ordinary day on Earth when the unimaginable happened. The peace humanity had enjoyed for over 3,000 years was shattered by a sudden message from the stars. A fleet of alien ships appeared in the sky, darkening the atmosphere, their massive forms casting shadows over entire cities. For a moment, the world froze in shock and awe, unsure whether this was a dream, a joke, or something far more serious. The aliens that appeared were known as the Drashans, a race that had long watched over the galaxy. They were not just any alien species, they were technologically advanced, with ships that could warp space itself and weapons capable of destroying planets. The Drashans had been peaceful for millennia, focusing on maintaining harmony in the galaxy. But now, they were breaking that peace to declare war on humanity. The message they broadcast was loud, clear, and filled with arrogance. The leader of the Drashan fleet, a tall figure with gleaming silver skin and eyes that glowed like twin suns, appeared on screens across the world. His voice was cold and powerful as he spoke. "Hear this, Earthlings," the Drashan leader said, his words echoing through every speaker. "For too long, your world has grown unchecked, expanding your influence across the stars. You, the humans, have disturbed the natural order of the universe. This will not be allowed. You have 72 hours to surrender or face destruction." For a moment, there was complete silence. People across the globe stood in disbelief, staring at the screen. It was the first time in human history that an alien species had come to Earth with the intent to wage war. The whole world held its breath, waiting for a reaction. But what happened next was something no one had expected. Laughter. It started in small bursts, from the back of rooms, from cafes and living rooms. Soon, the laughter spread, like a wave crashing over the entire planet. People laughed not out of fear, but out of confusion, amusement, and disbelief. The audacity of these aliens, declaring war after 3,000 years of peace, it was so absurd that humans couldn't help but laugh. On the streets of New York, a group of friends huddled together in front of a store window, watching the broadcast. One of them, a young man named Mike, wiped tears from his eyes, struggling to breathe through his chuckles. "Are they serious?" he gasped between laughs. "Looks like it," said Sarah, shaking her head in disbelief. They must have missed the memo about human humor. Across the world, similar reactions echoed. In London, a businessman chuckled into his phone as he watched the broadcast, telling his friend, "They want us to surrender. Do they have any idea what they're up against?" In Tokyo, a group of students sat together in a classroom, laughing so hard that they nearly fell out of their chairs. One student, Kaido, was holding his stomach. "This is ridiculous," he said. "They're trying to pick a fight with humans, the ones who invented the internet and global memes." Even world leaders, who had initially been stunned into silence, found themselves smirking at the absurdity of the situation. General Anderson, who had been part of humanity's defense plans for decades, couldn't help but crack a grin. He looked at the screen, then at his colleagues. "Well," he said, "if they think we're just going to fold over like that, they've clearly never met humanity. We've faced far worse than a few aliens." As the laughter continued, the world began to shift. What had been a moment of panic and fear was now a moment of collective pride. Humanity wasn't afraid. They didn't quake in terror at the sight of the alien fleet. Instead, they laughed at the thought of giving up to such a strange, arrogant threat. The Drashan fleet, watching from their ships in orbit, were confused. They had never encountered such a reaction before. They had expected fear, panic, perhaps even surrender. Instead, Earth's response was one of mockery. They had underestimated humanity's resilience, and now they were realizing that the humans were not afraid. The Drashan leader, frustrated by the unexpected response, issued a final warning. "We are serious, Earthlings. Do not underestimate us again. Surrender now or be destroyed." But the laughter didn't stop. It only grew louder. In the heart of the United Nations building, the leaders of Earth's nations gathered. They looked at each other, and for the first time, a sense of unity filled the room. They weren't sure how they would defeat the Drashans, but one thing was certain. They were not going to give up without a fight. "We've been through too much to be intimidated now," President Ramirez said, standing tall. "Let them come. We'll show them what humanity is capable of." And so, as the alien ships loomed above Earth, humanity's response was clear. They would not surrender. They would not be intimidated. The Drashans might have underestimated them, but they would soon learn just how wrong they were. The war had begun, and humanity was ready to face it with laughter and defiance. The Drashans had expected a different reaction from humanity. They believed that after 3,000 years of peaceful coexistence, Earth would crumble at the first sign of danger. They had seen countless civilizations fall under the weight of their superior technology and powerful fleets. But humans were different. They didn't cower in fear. They laughed. And that was something the Drashans didn't understand. From their massive fleet, hovering high above Earth, the Drashans could see the laughter below. It echoed through the atmosphere, filling their sensors with confusion. To the Drashans, it was a sign of weakness. They assumed that humanity was in denial about the gravity of the situation. They were wrong. "We will teach them the consequences of their defiance," said the Drashan leader, Krenak, staring at Earth's surface through the transparent window of his flagship. His voice was cold and calculating, as though dismissing the idea that humanity could mount any real resistance. He turned to his officers. "Prepare the weapons. They have mocked us long enough." While Krenak spoke with the confidence of a being who had crushed entire civilizations, his officers exchanged uneasy glances. The fleet's weapons were powerful, capable of disabling entire cities with a single shot. They had never faced resistance like this before. A threat like humanity's defiant laughter was unlike anything they had prepared for. Meanwhile, on Earth, the human reaction to the Drashans' message had shifted from laughter to action. The first few hours were filled with disbelief. Then jokes, memes, and viral videos mocking the aliens flooded the internet. It seemed as if humanity had made a game out of the entire situation. People shared pictures of Drashan ships with captions like, "When you order your invasion fleet online, but they send the wrong model." The internet had exploded with jokes, GIFs, and mockery, making light of the terrifying alien presence in the sky. But beneath the jokes, a different feeling was rising. A feeling that humans knew all too well, the need to protect their home. Governments around the world, still in a state of shock, quickly began to mobilize. Scientists, engineers, military leaders, and civilians, everyone was joining forces to defend the planet. Earth was united for the first time in centuries, not because of fear, but because of a shared sense of purpose. "We won't go down without a fight," said General Anderson, who had spent decades preparing for possible extraterrestrial threats. He stood before a room full of military leaders, examining the latest satellite images of the alien fleet. His face was stern, but his eyes showed determination. "There's no way we're going to let some aliens come here and tell us what to do." In response to the growing tension, military bases across the world began to prepare their defenses. But the human response wasn't all about weapons. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its ingenuity. People from all walks of life were finding creative ways to fight back. In a small lab in Paris, Dr. Linda Zhao, a leading scientist in energy technology, was working with a team of researchers to develop a new kind of energy shield. "We can't fight them with their weapons," she said, her hands flying over a keyboard. "But we can create a defense that stops their attacks. We have to think differently." Her words echoed the sentiment that was spreading all over Earth. Humans weren't going to match the Drashans' firepower head-on. They were going to outsmart them. Across the world, ordinary people were doing their part. In a remote farming village in India, farmer Rajesh Patel was building homemade drones from spare parts he found lying around. "If they want to fight," he said with a grin, "we'll give them a fight. We have our own tools." Even the tech-savvy youth of the world were getting involved. In a small apartment in Tokyo, 15-year-old Yuki Nakamura was working with a group of friends to hack into the Drashin's communication systems. "If we can jam their signals," she explained, "they won't be able to coordinate their attacks." And in New York City, a group of engineers and architects began reworking the designs of skyscrapers and public buildings. They reinforced structures to withstand alien bombardments and created underground shelters for civilians in case of an invasion. The Drashins, still watching Earth from above, continued to underestimate the planet's inhabitants. They sent waves of electromagnetic pulses to knock out Earth's communication systems, hoping to cause confusion and panic. But to their surprise, humanity adapted. While some systems went down temporarily, humans quickly found alternative ways to communicate. In a military command center in Washington, D.C., Commander Elizabeth Klein spoke to a room full of officials, her voice steady. "The Drashins think they can break us with their fancy tech. But what they don't know is that we've been preparing for this moment for years. And we don't need to fight their war. We'll make our own." By now, the initial fear had turned into something more powerful: defiance. The laughter had stopped, replaced by focused determination. The Drashins might have had advanced technology, but humans had something they didn't: a fierce will to survive. As the Drashin fleet prepared to strike, they did not realize that humanity was already preparing for the fight of its life. What the Drashins thought would be an easy conquest was quickly turning into a battle they were not ready for. The Drashin fleet hovered above Earth, their massive ships blocking out the sun in certain parts of the world. They had underestimated humanity's resilience, and now they were preparing for the next step in their plan. But they didn't realize that Earth was not sitting idly by, waiting for the inevitable. The planet's people had come together in ways they had never done before, and they were ready to show the Drashins just how wrong they were. In Washington, D.C., General Anderson sat in a war room filled with officers and military leaders. The air was thick with tension, but there was no fear. Instead, the room buzzed with excitement. The first phase of their defense plan was complete. "We've set up the EMP shields around our major cities," Anderson said, looking over the maps and data on the large screen in front of him. "They won't be able to disable our communication or power grids now." On the ground, scientists and engineers had worked tirelessly to ensure that Earth's infrastructure remained intact. The Drashins' initial electromagnetic pulses had caused some disruptions, but humanity had quickly adapted. With the new EMP shields in place, Earth was no longer vulnerable to the Drashins' technological advantage. Meanwhile, across the world, civilians were doing their part as well. In London, a group of tech enthusiasts had come together to build makeshift radar systems designed to detect incoming alien ships. In the Australian outback, farmers had rigged their agricultural equipment to produce large-scale drones, ready to scout and strike. It was a sight to behold: ordinary people who had no military experience, but who knew their home and were determined to protect it. In New York City, a group of volunteers worked around the clock, building safe houses and preparing supplies for any potential evacuations. But the sense of unity and determination was strong. The citizens weren't running away. They were staying, ready to face the Drashins head-on if it came to that. Back in space, Krynock, the Drashin leader, was growing frustrated. He watched as his fleet prepared to launch their first wave of attacks. Their weapons were powerful, capable of devastating entire cities with a single strike. But still, the humans laughed. They mocked him, and it made him angry. Why do they continue to resist? Krynock growled, slamming his fist onto the console in front of him. We have the power to destroy them. Why don't they just surrender? His officers, who had been quietly observing, exchanged nervous glances. They had never encountered a species like this before. Humanity didn't react the way other civilizations did. They didn't bow in fear. They didn't panic. They fought. Krynock's frustration grew as he ordered his fleet to prepare for a full-scale attack. We will strike now, and we will break their spirit once and for all. But as the Drashins moved forward with their attack, they were met with something they hadn't expected: resistance. The first wave of Drashan ships fired their destructive beams at Earth's largest cities, aiming to cripple humanity's ability to fight back. But the humans had prepared. In Los Angeles, an enormous energy shield shimmered to life just as the Drashan lasers hit. The beams bounced off, harmlessly dissipating into space. The Drashans had expected Earth's defenses to be weak, but the shield was proof that humans had been busy preparing. The attacks had failed, and the humans were far from beaten. "We're not going to make it easy for them," said Commander Elizabeth Klein, watching the screens in the control room. Her fingers hovered over the communication buttons, ready to give orders. "Get the counteroffensive ready. It's time to show them what we've got." In response, Earth's military launched their own strikes. Small, fast fighter jets, modified with alien tech captured from previous encounters, zipped through the skies, weaving between the Drashan ships. Though the Drashan vessels were far more massive and powerful, the human pilots were quick and resourceful, using their knowledge of Earth's atmosphere to gain an advantage. Meanwhile, the homemade drones created by farmers and tech enthusiasts were deployed. Armed with makeshift laser weapons and explosive devices, the drones targeted weaker spots in the Drashan fleet. They were nothing compared to the powerful weapons of the Drashan ships, but their sheer number and unpredictability made them a challenge. In space, Krenak watched in disbelief as his fleet struggled to maintain control. His ships were being hit from all sides by human weapons they had never anticipated. Worse yet, human ingenuity was proving to be a greater threat than any weapon. Every time he thought the humans were cornered, they found a way to fight back. "Impossible," Krenak shouted. "They should have surrendered by now. How are they doing this?" The Drashan leader's confidence was slipping. Earth was not as helpless as he had assumed. Humanity's strength wasn't in their weapons, but in their ability to adapt, to improvise, and to work together. What the Drashans didn't understand was that the humans weren't fighting for just survival. They were fighting for their home, for their families, and for the future. And the Drashans were beginning to realize that they had made a grave mistake underestimating humanity. The war had only just begun, but it was already clear that this wouldn't be a fight they could win easily. The Drashan fleet was growing uneasy. Their once confident leader, Krenak, paced nervously inside his flagship. His plans had faltered, and humanity's unexpected resistance was proving to be more than a nuisance. It was becoming a real problem. His ships were powerful, each capable of wiping out entire cities, yet the humans were managing to withstand their attacks. Earth's cities, protected by energy shields, stood firm against the Drashan onslaught. The homemade drones, scattered across the planet, were causing havoc in the Drashan ranks, distracting their ships with hit-and-run tactics. Krenak turned to his officers, his voice cold with frustration. Why are they not broken? Why do they keep fighting? He slammed his fist on the console. His officers shifted uncomfortably but didn't reply. On Earth, the situation was looking brighter for humanity. The Drashans had not expected such a strong defense, and it was clear now that Earth's inhabitants were not going to fold under pressure. People across the planet were coming together, united in their desire to protect their home. In the United States, General Anderson was in constant communication with commanders around the world. The coordinated effort was impressive. Everyone was doing their part. Earth's military, scientists, and everyday citizens were working in tandem, sharing knowledge and resources. The momentum was shifting. Humanity was gaining ground. "We've got their ships on the run," Commander Elizabeth Klein reported, her voice steady, but her eyes gleaming with excitement. "The shields are holding, and our counterattacks are starting to hit their weak points." In Paris, Dr. Linda Zhou and her team had made a breakthrough. After weeks of testing, they had developed a new weapon, one that could pierce the Drashan's formidable shields. "It's not much, but it's a start," she said, her face focused as she adjusted the settings on the device. It was a small handheld device, nothing like the massive Drashan weapons, but it had the potential to disrupt the energy shields on the alien ships. "We've got to get this to the front lines," Dr. Zhou said, her eyes sharp with determination. At the same time, Yuki Nakamura and her friends were putting the finishing touches on a hacking program designed to infiltrate the Drashan communication network. It was risky. No one had ever hacked into the alien fleet's system before, but if they succeeded, it could throw the Drashans into chaos. "We've already jammed their sensors for a few seconds," Yuki said, grinning as her fingers flew over the keyboard. "Now we just need to break through their firewalls. If we can access their communication system, we can send them false orders. We'll confuse them long enough to make a real difference." Meanwhile, in the skies above Earth, the fighting was growing fiercer. Human fighter jets, now equipped with alien technology, weaved through the air, dodging laser blasts from the Drashan ships. The pilots, though outnumbered and outgunned, flew with unmatched courage and skill. They understood the stakes, and they fought as if their lives, and the future of humanity, depended on it, which of course it did. Back in space, the Drashan fleet had finally deployed its most powerful weapon, a planet-destroying bomb. It was intended to wipe out entire continents, rendering Earth a lifeless husk. The bomb, however, was unlike anything the Drashans had ever used before. It was a weapon of last resort, designed for only the most desperate situations. Krenak stood in the command room, watching the countdown on a large screen. His hands were clenched in tight fists. He had no more patience for this war of attrition. It was time to end this once and for all. The bomb would be deployed in 1 hour. But as the countdown continued, a message from his fleet commander arrived. The Drashan ships were experiencing unexpected malfunctions. Energy levels were fluctuating, and their shields were failing in several locations. Krenok's face twisted in anger as he read the report. "What is happening?" he demanded. "How are we losing power?" Back on Earth, the new energy weapon developed by Dr. Zhou was proving effective. The small handheld device had been used to disable one of the Drashan ship shields, allowing a group of human fighter jets to target the ship's vulnerable sections. It wasn't a decisive victory, but it was enough to send a message to the aliens. Humanity was far from beaten. General Anderson received the news from the front lines, and for the first time, a genuine smile crossed his face. "We've got them on the ropes. Keep up the pressure, everyone. This is our chance." Yuki's team was also making progress. They had broken through the Drashans' communication systems and sent a virus into their network. The Drashans now had to contend with false orders and chaotic signals, making it harder for them to coordinate their attacks. "We've confused them," Yuki said, her voice filled with excitement. "They won't know what's coming next." The tide was turning. The Drashans had believed that the fight would be over quickly. They thought humanity would fold, but instead they were facing a united, determined planet, willing to do whatever it took to defend their world. Krenok's frustration reached a breaking point as he watched his fleet struggle. The Drashans had not been prepared for the kind of resistance humanity was putting up. Their once unshakable confidence had been replaced by doubt. In that moment, Krenok realized that the war was far from over, and that the Drashans were facing a foe unlike any they had ever encountered. Humanity was not going to be easily defeated. The Drashans had underestimated the strength of the human spirit. The Drashans were beginning to panic. Their once mighty fleet, which had been feared across the galaxy, was starting to show cracks. The powerful ships that had been so confident in their strength now faced unexpected challenges from a species they had underestimated. Humanity was proving to be a far greater force than the Drashans had ever imagined. In space, the situation was tense. The Drashan ships were struggling to maintain control as their communication systems became more and more unreliable. The virus that Yuki's team had unleashed was causing havoc. Orders were scrambled, and ship formations were in chaos. The humans were capitalizing on every small weakness the Drashans showed. "I can't believe this is happening," Commander Shorin, a senior Drashan officer, muttered, staring at the screens in front of him. "How are they doing this? They're just humans." Despite their massive advantage in firepower and technology, The Drashans were struggling to respond to the guerrilla tactics of the humans. Their ships, once confident in their overwhelming firepower, now found themselves vulnerable to the ingenuity of Earth's defenders. General Anderson had never seen anything like it. Across the globe, people were stepping up in ways they had never expected. In the heart of Africa, a small group of scientists had developed a prototype laser cannon capable of taking down Drashan drones. In South America, military units had coordinated with local militias, combining their resources to launch surprise attacks against Drashan ground forces. Commander Elizabeth Klein had been leading a fleet of modified human ships that had managed to infiltrate the Drashan lines. The human ships, smaller and faster than the Drashan behemoths, darted through the enemy's defense systems, dodging laser blasts and returning fire when they could. "We've got their attention," Elizabeth said, watching the chaotic Drashan fleet on her screen. "Now, it's time to go on the offensive." The Earth fighters, now bolstered with the alien technology they had recovered, were more effective than ever. They had learned how to exploit the Drashans' weak points, targeting vulnerable sections of the alien ships with pinpoint accuracy. Each hit, though small, sent a message to the Drashans. Humanity was not going to back down. Back on Earth, the mood was shifting. What had begun as fear was turning into confidence. People no longer felt like they were just surviving. They were fighting, and they were winning. In the underground bunkers and command centers, Earth's leaders were making their moves. Dr. Zhao's team had perfected their energy weapon, and it was now being used across the globe. They had found a way to replicate the device, and soon every major city was armed with the technology that could disable Drashan shields. "We've got a window," General Anderson said. "Their shields are weakening. We need to hit them with everything we've got." A coordinated strike was planned, targeting the Drashan flagship. It was the heart of their operations, and if it fell, the rest of the fleet would likely follow. All of Earth's forces, military, scientists, and volunteers, were working together toward this one goal. In space, Krenak, the Drashan leader, was starting to lose his cool. He had watched as his ships fell, one after another, to the relentless attacks of the humans. It was becoming clear that the humans were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting to win. And they were succeeding. "This is unacceptable." Krenak roared in frustration, his claws gripping the armrests of his command chair. "We cannot let this planet defy us." But as the days went on, the cracks in the Drashan command grew deeper. The leadership, once so certain of victory, was now questioning their next move. Krenak had always relied on brute force, but the humans weren't folding. In fact, they were growing stronger every day. "I will not let this end in failure," Krenak said to his officers, determination burning in his eyes. "We will take back control. We will crush them." But deep down, he knew that things weren't going according to plan. And as his fleet limped through space, he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that they might have underestimated their enemy far too much. On Earth, the final offensive was underway. The coordinated strike against the Drashan flagship was set to begin. Earth's forces had learned everything they needed to know about the Drashan fleet. Every pilot, every soldier, and every scientist was ready for the decisive blow. They had become one unstoppable force. "We're going to do this," Elizabeth said to her crew as they prepared for the mission. "This is it. We end this today." Humanity had already come a long way from the days of fear and uncertainty. Now they were fighting back with everything they had. The tide of the war had turned, and the Drashans were no longer the invincible force they had once seemed. Humanity had shown them that no matter how big or how powerful their enemies were, they would never give up without a fight. As the countdown to the final strike began, Earth's forces moved into position. The Drashans had not been prepared for the sheer determination and creativity of the human race, and now, the aliens were about to learn a lesson they would never forget. The time had come. The plan was in motion, and Earth's forces were ready to launch their most decisive attack yet. Humanity, united like never before, had prepared every weapon, every strategy, and every resource to deal the final blow to the Drashans. The battle that had begun with fear and uncertainty was now approaching its final chapter. In space, the Drashan fleet was in disarray. Their ships, once powerful and intimidating, now showed signs of wear. The humans had learned their weaknesses and were using every opportunity to strike. The Drashans were no longer the unstoppable force they had once been. The loss of their flagship was imminent, and Krynoc, the Drashan leader, could feel the pressure mounting. "Prepare for the counterattack," Krynoc ordered, his voice barely hiding his frustration. He could sense the end was near, but he refused to admit it. "We will not be defeated by these primitives." But even as Krynoc tried to rally his forces, the humans were closing in. General Anderson's command center was alive with activity as every detail of the final assault was being coordinated. The battle plans were set. The time for waiting was over. "Everyone, get ready. This is our moment," General Anderson said, his voice calm but filled with a fierce determination. "We've come this far, and we're not stopping now." Elizabeth Klein, leading one of the key human fleets, stared at the holographic map of the Drashan fleet. She knew what was at stake. Every move they made had to be perfect. The Drashans were strong, but humanity had learned how to fight back. And now, they were about to show the aliens just how far they had come. The humans' plan was simple: strike at the heart of the Drashan fleet and destroy their flagship, the command ship that controlled their entire armada. Without it, the rest of the fleet would fall apart. But it was a dangerous mission. The Drashan ships were heavily armed, and they would do everything they could to defend their leadership. Elizabeth's heart raced as she communicated with her team. "We're ready for this. Stick to the plan. We attack in 5 minutes." The final push was going to be difficult, but humanity was used to overcoming the odds. It had always been their strength: survival through determination, through unity, and through a refusal to ever give up. On Earth, the world's forces were coming together in a way no one had ever imagined. Soldiers, civilians, scientists, and engineers, everyone was working in unison. In every city, across every continent, humanity was ready for the final battle. People who had never even thought about fighting were now standing shoulder to shoulder with soldiers, doing their part to defend their world. Back in space, Elizabeth and her fleet were approaching the Drashan flagship. The enemy ships had formed a tight defensive ring around the flagship, but the humans had a secret weapon. Dr. Joe's new energy weapons were the key to breaking through the Drashan shields. "Ready the energy weapons," Elizabeth ordered, her voice steady despite the tension. "Target the weak points on their shields. We break through, then go for the core." As her fleet moved closer, the Drashan ships began to respond. A barrage of laser fire erupted from their ships, lighting up the darkness of space. But the humans were prepared. The advanced human ships, powered by the stolen Drashan technology, dodged and weaved through the barrage, expertly avoiding the incoming fire. Elizabeth's fighter took the lead, weaving between the Drashan ships, staying just out of reach of their weapons. "Now," she yelled, and a powerful burst of energy shot out from her ship, striking the Drashan fleet's shields. The blast was powerful enough to make the Drashan shields flicker, and for the first time in weeks, they began to fail. Elizabeth grinned as she saw the effect of the shot. "We've got them," she shouted. "All ships, fire." Human ships unleashed their weapons, targeting the vulnerable points on the Drashan ships. The blasts hit their mark, causing massive explosions and weakening the enemy's defense. The humans were not holding back. This was their moment, and they knew they had to strike hard and fast. As the battle raged on, Krynoc watched in horror. His fleet was falling apart. The humans had breached their defenses, and his flagship was now exposed. He gritted his teeth in frustration. "We can still win this," Krynoc muttered under his breath. "We will not let them take everything from us." But the reality was beginning to sink in. The Drashan ships were overwhelmed. The humans had proven their resilience, their ingenuity, and their determination. The Drashans had underestimated Earth, and now they were paying the price. On the surface of Earth, the world watched as the battle unfolded. Every person was glued to their screens, watching as humanity's forces made their final push. The world had come together as one, fighting not just for survival, but for victory. Every small victory on the battlefield was celebrated, every moment a reminder that humanity had risen above the odds. As Elizabeth's fleet closed in on the Drashan flagship, the final strike was about to begin. The humans had learned, adapted, and fought with everything they had. Now they were ready to end the war, once and for all. The Drashan flagship was now in flames, its massive hull cracking under the weight of the human assault. The battle had raged for hours, but now the end was in sight. The Drashans, once so confident in their superiority, were finally realizing that their reign over the galaxy was coming to a dramatic end. On Earth, the people held their breath as they watched the final moments unfold. Every person was glued to their screens, watching as the humans, against all odds, took the fight to the Drashans. The whole world was united in this moment, praying for victory, knowing that the future of humanity rested on the outcome of this battle. General Anderson sat in the command center, watching the live feeds from space. His face was grim, but there was a spark of hope in his eyes. "This is it," he said quietly. "The final strike. Let's make it count." Elizabeth Klein, aboard her ship, was also watching the destruction of the Drashan flagship. Her heart raced, but she remained focused. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. The humans had come so far, and now they were about to finish what they had started. "We got them on the ropes, but don't get cocky," Elizabeth said over the comms. "We need to finish this." As her ship maneuvered closer to the now crippled Drashan flagship, her crew began their final preparations. The Drashans were desperate now, fighting with everything they had left. But the humans were smarter, more creative, and more determined than ever. "Fire the last wave," Elizabeth ordered. "We end this now." The final barrage of energy weapons hit the Drashan flagship with precision, the blast tearing through the remaining defenses. The once mighty ship was now a broken husk, its engines failing, its weapons silenced. The Drashans had no chance of survival now. Krynoc, the Drashan leader, watched from his command post in disbelief. His empire, built over thousands of years, was crumbling before his eyes. The humans had outsmarted them, outlasted them, and now they were going to destroy everything he had worked so hard to build. "This cannot be happening," Krynoc screamed, his voice filled with rage. "We are the Drashans. We are invincible." But no matter how hard he tried to rally his troops, it was clear that the Drashan forces had lost. Their fleet was shattered, their leader broken. The humans had shown them that they could not be defeated, no matter the odds. In the final moments of the battle, the Drashan flagship exploded, a massive fireball lighting up the darkness of space. The remaining Drashan ships scattered in panic, their crew members fleeing in fear. The battle was over. Back on Earth, the world erupted in celebration. People cheered, hugged, and cried as they realized the full extent of their victory. Humanity had survived. Against an enemy that was stronger, more advanced, and seemingly invincible, they had fought back and won. General Anderson watched the footage of the Drashan fleet's defeat, a smile spreading across his face. "We did it," he said quietly. "We've won." Elizabeth Klein, now back on Earth, was greeted by a cheering crowd as she stepped off her ship. She had led the charge, and now humanity's victory was complete. But she didn't feel like a hero. She didn't feel like a conqueror. She simply felt grateful. "We didn't just win a battle," she said in a speech later that day. "We proved to the universe that humanity will never give up. We will always fight for our future, no matter who stands in our way." As she spoke, the entire world watched, united in pride. Humanity had not only survived, but had come out stronger. The Drashans had underestimated them, and now they were paying the price. But Elizabeth knew that this was not the end. The battle against the Drashans had been won, But humanity still had a long road ahead. The universe was vast, and there were other challenges to face. But they had proven something important. They had proven that humanity, with its creativity, determination, and spirit, could overcome any obstacle. And as the sun set on Earth, humanity knew that their future was brighter than ever. The galaxy was still out there, and humanity had earned its place among the stars. The Dratians had fallen, but humanity's journey had only just begun.